So I've got a couple things on my mind. Not sure where to start or what to, cap it with. But with tomatoes being over, I've basically am in a position to where I can kind of go into the normal streaming schedule that I had kind of set up before that started up. So it would be like Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. What is also interesting is I've got about 10 months where I'm not quite sure what I'm gonna do, and where it's kinda somewhat shady. And I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to make things work. I've been working the last couple of months. My time management hasn't been the best. There's been all kinds of things rolling around and going on. And overall, it's just been kind of an interesting year this year. I'm both excited and scared and unsure, because with the podcast that I started, I'm hoping that that can pull a few people in. There are also a number of other things that down the road I can hope work out better. And I'm looking back over the past few years and what I've been able to acquire and get from the streaming and all just. And I'm hoping that this YouTube stuff will help pick that up. It's something that I probably should have been working on, at least with stream clips a while ago, but I haven't been too diligent on. But with this, as you can tell, I'm just kind of mashing everything into one channel rather than having separated channels for everything like everyone else does. It feels like you kind of get the whole person more than just this one part of me in the channel. It's I know some people might find it annoying. It's well, I come for this content, and that's it, and that's all I want, but why do you have to do the other stuff? It's well, at the same time, some of the other stuff will leak into the other one too, so that's something that I've debated over, doing a separate channel otherwise for something. I mean, you look at PeerTube and the way it's organized, I can have the one account and multiple, quote, channels that those go under, so I can have, some of that separated out so you can subscribe via RSS to an individual one, which I have to migrate that instance over around to a different hosting service. I'm probably going to wait a few months until the money I have in Vulture is basically gone. But I'm hoping that I can get all the other stuff spun up in time so that I can cover, I should be able to cover most of the hosting cost through that other one with the stuff I get through Brave browser with their ad reward stuff. But I'm hoping that with some of this other stuff I can pull in a bit more so that I don't have to rely on other things. I mean, I'm looking around for other things to get some money in the meantime. But I really want it all to take off. I've kind of tried a couple different approaches over the last little bit. Some things have picked things up. Other things have kind of fizzled out. I've seen people come in, stick around for a while, and then leave after a bit. And I understand that you guys are busy. Things happen, phases in life change and everything. I completely understand that. The same thing happens with me. I go through those different things, and sometimes some things just kind of fall out. I'm just hoping that over the next little bit I can build it up with the podcast stuff and this stuff and the streaming and even the website stuff too, so that I can maybe pull something together. Because there are a couple other things that I'm looking at that I have to work on the website with that I plan on adding as well. So I know some people might be interested in it and others might not be. I'm not revealing what it is quite yet, but that's something. And maybe that idea will pull in a bit more. I'm thinking of getting someone else's input who's doing something similar. So, but it is exciting. I've kind of been dropped on my butt sooner than I was thinking. Because I thought maybe pumpkins would, after tomatoes with my neighbor, would go for a bit longer. But like at the end of the week, he's going to be done with everything. He's basically closing up shop and being done for the year. So the plans that I had weren't quite as long, but I mean, it was really good tomato picking. It did get kind of tough in the beginning. It got a little bit tough towards the end, but it ended up pulling through okay. It was good while it lasted. I'm kind of glad that I get to somewhat rest. I'll be pushing some of the other stuff. I'm glad to be able to stay up late a little bit later again. So, well, I can stay up later, but I can't be loud later. There are things that I've learned from this too the last couple months. My time management hasn't been the best, and I need to work on that even more. And work on stuff around home a little bit more too, since I have a bit more time. But I could have managed my time a bit better. So if there's anything that you learn from this, find a time management scheme that works and stick with it. That's usually the toughest part, is I'll find something. The simplest thing that I found is the bullet journaling. You manage more task-oriented than time-oriented per se. But when you're planning it out, you plan out what you feasibly believe you could do in a day, and bullet journaling is very adaptable, so that makes it work. But find something that works for you and stick with it. I was doing bullet journaling really well for a little bit, and then it kind of like fizzled out. So I kind of got caught up in a bunch of things, so that's why it fizzled out. And I want to kind of get back on top of things, so I will work on getting that back into place. But yeah, find something and hold yourself to it. Maybe find someone that'll help hold your feet to the fire on it. What else have I learned the last couple months? Well, some things suck. Sometimes we need to find a way to decompress when we hit those like high stress crisis situations, like I had with the dog. And having a place where you can decompress is very valuable. Tomato picking was kind of one of those therapeutic things for me. I didn't pick too hard, honestly, after the dog. But at the same time, I was taking time to decompress and let things out. Because if you ask me, that week that I was picking tomatoes, those are some of the saddest tomatoes I have probably picked. Not because of quality, but because of all the decompression and emotion put into them while I was picking. So I'd joke around, it's like if anyone not with like the people there, but like at home, it's like if anyone takes those tomatoes and eats them and they start crying, I may be responsible, but it's just a fact of life. So, find that activity. Find something, even like during the off season, find a healthy way to get things out. Writing helps. Finding an alone spot, maybe going into some mountain and just screaming. But find something. What else was there? Oh! So, a couple other things kind of coming out of being done with tomatoes is if you lose that routine, sometimes a change after you get used to it for a couple of months, when you go back to the way things, to a similar situation to the way things were before, you may be tempted to acquire some bad habits that maybe you had at one point and had gotten rid of before, and you kind of start to fall on those bad habits again because you've got like this big fat hole in your pocket of time that just opened up. And that's where I think it's important to remember to, if you've lost some habits, maybe you kept going with some of those habits over a time period, and then they kind of fell out of the way because you got really busy or whatever, and then you find that you have some more time back, whether it be through like some job closing on you or whatever. Pick up those old good habits again, because if you fall into the bad habits, if you don't nip them in the bud early, then they may be there to fester you for a bit. So just kind of pick up on those good old habits and move on with it, and find those habits or routines that are most important when you're going through it, and don't stop them. If you falter for a couple days, pick it back up right away, because if you've got a couple anchoring routine habits that you're doing, that'll help keep you solid. Because sometimes the irregularity boggles people, because I know when all the shutdown stuff happened, church had basically, in essence, preemptively been canceled worldwide before any of the governors or anything started their church lockdown measures. Well, church for me, my church had done that before any church lockdown measures were put in place anywhere. And it was really odd, and there were habits that basically I had strengthened, and some good habits that I had acquired over the time that I really want to keep going. But having those anchoring habits is what will give you some regularity, even though you've lost maybe a large portion of regularity that you kind of leaned on. So, sometimes that means you re-anchor your habits, so when the other routine things and regular things that fall off, then you're not completely lost in the dark. And sometimes you have an anchored habit, and then maybe something that you had leaned on regularly drops. You've still got something anchoring you down if you make sure that that's an anchored habit that you have. So keep up on those good habits. Remember those good habits. And if you fall into those bad habits, again, find a good habit to replace that bad habit and nip it in the bud right away before it can fester and grow. Because those bad habits that you allow will hold you back probably more than not having the good habit itself, but the good habit itself helps push out the bad habit in many ways. Like they say, garbage in, garbage out. So if you let that bad habit in, it's going to basically fester into something that you don't want in life. So sometimes those bad habits may be as mundane as your internal thinking. So if you have a habit of trashing on yourself, kind of start, for every bad thought that you have about yourself, find 5 good thoughts that you have about yourself and work it out that way. And eventually your self-talk and self-think will turn into something more positive. That's just an example of that. Because some people are so negative about themselves that when they start introducing the positive, yeah, it's kind of a shift and it feels like self-flagellating. But if you don't have a good self-esteem, why is anyone else going to like you? It's kind of the same deal with your habits. If you have bad habits hanging around, who's going to want to hang around you? But if you have a bunch of good habits, there are going to be some people that don't like you because you're happier than them. And they're going to say you're self-conceited and everything else. But if you know that you just want to be your best self and I know, that's very cliche to say, actually. But if you want to be your best self, you have to have good habits. And you have to be willing to let go of bad habits, no matter how comfortable they are. But yeah, those are a few things that I've learned over the last couple of months. With tomatoes being gone, I hope, like I said, I can pick things up. If you've appreciated the stuff that I've put out over the last couple of months, if it's helped you in any way, I would appreciate, support on Subscribestar, PayPal, or anything else. You can come and join the Discord and things that way. It's always linked down in the description. So, I hope everything turns out fine for you, and I will see you in the next one.